So first of all, I'd like to first say that I am a pianist and I teach at Trinity Public Conservatoire and also at the Trinity Public College of Music. I come from Russia and have received a very traditional education, which means that it was kind of more in a classical way, so we didn't have such a versatile and varied education background as people get now at European conservatories and London conservatories. So, for example, I've never learned to improvise or play jazz when I was a student. It wasn't something that you were necessarily exposed to. So it was very much kind of following in the steps of great masters and learning from very good pedagogues. It was a very solid education and very sort of, had a very good base, but it did not necessarily always have variety, or it didn't necessarily have a knowledge of Western European culture. And a lot of recordings probably now that we exposed to when we listen to Richter or Gilles play, particularly Viennese music or Bach, sometimes you think, you used to wonder whether they actually knew, and they probably, at the time they were geniuses, so they had this kind of inner understanding of that music, but didn't really know much about culture, because the Soviet Union was a closed country at the time. So I came to London and I was picked up by, at the time, South Bank Centre, which started a series called Fresh. It was a young musicians platform, and I was selected to be in the very first one. They invited me to do a recital at the Purcell Room together with other 4 young musicians with different instruments, and that kind of helped to start a career. And for the moment, until for quite a few years, I was touring around Europe and in England. But somehow there was a feeling in me that it wasn't exactly who I was. And that happened to be, there was a festival in London organized by International Hero Tribute. And it's very rare when you're being approached by this kind of people, this organization which says to you, well, we'll give you money, what would you like to do? That practically doesn't happen, especially nowadays. And this is exactly what happened at that time. And they said, we want to have a festival in London called Breathless, and you would be really interesting if you could collaborate with other artists and create some programs that would be interesting. So they asked me to create 3 different programs, curate them. And this is when I came across a dance company, a modern dance company around there. And we sat together and we thought, can we do something together on this project and one of the concerts. And so we have chosen 2 pieces of music. One was Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, and the other one was Liszt Funerais. And we basically, they designed a choreography. I mean, later on, this choreography for the Moonlight Sonata won a prize. It became a Best Choreography of the Year, and it became in the repertoire of Brandberg Company. And this was my very first time working with a modern dance. Now, I didn't really have an idea at the time of what I was getting myself into. So when we decided on the program, they approached me and they said, can you give us a recording? So I, without much thinking, I just gave them a recording of whatever I really preferred, my version from the YouTube, and I gave it to them. And of course, then I started learning pieces, and when it came to rehearsal, I realized that some of the tempies were, I had a different idea about the tempies, so there was a lot of negotiations going on. And I remember that at some point I asked Martin Joyce, I said, could I take the second movement of Beethoven's Sonata slower at this moment? And he said no, and I said, why? And he said, well, because I'm standing on one leg. And it's not something I ever heard in my life and use it sort of as an excuse. So it made me think that actually when you give a recording to a modern dancer, a ballet dancer, it has to be your recording, and it has to be something that you have thought through very carefully, you've chosen the tempos, and that because this is going to be the recording they're going to be working with. So when you meet for rehearsals, you want to actually stick to what you've had. So this was interesting, and so we did this project, and I just want to show you a little bit. Yes, but just before you see the clip of this, a couple of things which I also discovered that non-musicians hear music in a very different way. So they hear music, especially dancers. As I teach at Trinity, we have a wonderful lab on school next door to us, and I work and encourage my students to work with dancers a lot because it teaches you a lot about time, particularly. But dancers hear music in a different way. They hear music where they can actually pick up a rhythm and a phrase because they've got to create a movement there. So I realized, it's something that is different. It's not how we hear the music. And the other thing is that it's not the chamber music collaboration. It's something that is the two creative entities that come together and they create something third. There's it's you with your performance and plus then the dancers with their choreography, and so it's a meeting of two creative bodies in the piece. And I just want to show you in me this kind of thirst of further exploration with the music and other artists. So my kind of next interesting project with the dancer was very different in a way because it was I collaborated with a flamenco dancer. We've created a whole program of Spanish music, from classical Spanish music like the Albenis and Granados to Montpou and actually living composers as well. And we worked together with a wonderful flamenco dancer who lives in Malaga, and he's choreographed these pieces. Because so flamenco dancer essentially is a percussionist. And Spanish music is based on, on rhythm, on dances. So it was actually quite interesting to incorporate this. And then, having sort of done it with him together, first I tried it with a singer because there's a lot of really beautiful operettas and operas in Spanish. So we thought we'll combine that. It didn't quite work. So then I found beautiful drawings of Ukrainian artists. Whose colors, the palette scheme was very Spanish, and that kind of started me providing a backdrop to the dance. So it was me and a flamenco dancer, and the backdrop was those drawings. Now the first experience with that was interesting because also you have to time yourself. So you have to sort of work with the same piece of music until, and then match the timing of the projected picture to that piece of music, and you had to sort of stick to it. And then you had to create a storyline that was not just told in music and in dance, but also in color. It was a very successful project because it was very unusual and interesting, and we went with it everywhere. We were in Egypt and in Germany, and we went to Turkey with this, and we had a really wonderful sort of feedback for this. And again, I just want to show a little clip to you first. With Alvaro was that this was our very first concert actually, and then the project has evolved a lot. Because at the beginning, as you can see, there is very little interaction between the pianist and the dancer. Later on, as it developed, as we put more pieces into it, we've actually played Defy has some beautiful Bali music, and he's done his own transcriptions for piano from Bali. So we've actually developed scenes, and Alvaro managed to get me off the piano and taught me some movements. So I can't quite say I danced flamenco, but I did get up, and I was the jealous wife, and he was the husband. So we did actually, he got me moving around, which is unusual because pianists usually sit at the piano and they don't move. So we had these scenes, and he was throwing a hat, so we actually created a little scenario. What was interesting working with somebody who's sort of based on improvisation, even though there is still very much of choreography involved in creating this piece of performance, is that it was a much more involved process. Whereas with a Bali dancer, it's kind of preset, and you meet and you then deliver something together. And actually, I found when I was playing with Rambar or later on with the Bali dancers, it's better not to even look at them, because what they were doing was not at all sort of comparable, or didn't have enough parallels with what I was doing. So, but with Alvaro, it was completely different, because I was much more kind of responding. He was responding to me, and I was responding to him. So this became more of a chamber music kind of idea, that we were feeding off each other. And sometimes he also, because they can control the volume, so it was louder and quieter. So we were cooperating at that level and listening, had to listen to each other, so very intensively. And so this was interesting. I haven't explored kind of other types of music, like Latin American music, with the dancer, but kind of the next thing that led me to it was working with text. So now with text is interesting, because text could be used in kind of three different ways. One is a spoken word, which is obviously poetry, and there you can play around with either poets that inspire the composers that you play, or you could use, because some composers leave instructions not just as markings on a score, but they leave instructions as written instructions. So it's sometimes very interesting to display the written sort of instructions of the composer as you play a piece, because sort of also or snippets of that, just to kind of create an atmosphere or give an idea to a listener of what you're trying to achieve. So the spoken word is very interesting. I've experimented with working with different actors, and I found that in this medium it works very well when there's like a shorter pieces interspersed with poetic readings. So that worked quite well. Then I really enjoyed displaying the writing as you play. So again, this is where the composer's instructions, or even Liszt when he writes his sonnets or sonatas, there's a little snippet at the beginning of what he wants to put across. Maybe you just put that on the screen and it immediately kind of creates a different background. It gives you a kind of a foliage, it gives you different wrapping to the concept, which I found very intriguing. And that can lead to things like scenarios, because in a way, we already write scenarios, because when you're putting a program together for your recital, you, in a way, creating a scenario already, because you're thinking about which composers go together, which composers don't go together, how can you progress, how can you tell a story, how can you develop a story. So in a way, putting a program together for a recital is already writing a scenario. But in my case, it could be it's extended itself further, because when you work with visual imagery, when you work with the dances, you kind of need to create a story that is not necessarily what you hear in the music, but you're creating something else with it. Like the next concert, for example, in London that I will do will require me to actually kind of write the scenario, because we will perform it in the theatre, which will have a set from a play called Sherlock's Carol. And Sherlock's Carol is a play which brings two great figures to the play, which is Sherlock Holmes and Charles Dickens. And as you all know, Sherlock Holmes played the violin. And Charles Dickens was a very keen musician. He was actually at the Royal Academy of Music studying for some years, and he played a number of instruments, and he was in the choir. He wrote a libretto for an opera, he wrote a couple of songs. He was a very, very keen musician, and his favorite composers were Mozart, Chopin, and Mendelssohn. So not very many people actually know that about Charles Dickens. So it will be interesting, because we will have a setting of Victorian Street from a kind of Christmas Carol, really, of Charles Dickens. So it will be interesting to deliver music with some readings from the plays. And of course it'll have to be chamber music, because I will have to bring a violinist with me and think about how can we represent the Sherlock Holmes in that scenario. But that's in the future. But in the project which did involve scenario was I collaborated with a film director, a British film director called Alexander Fodor, who writes short films, and we decided one day it would be really wonderful to. He asked me actually the question. He said, do you actually, when you listen to music, do you imagine what time of the year it could be, or is it something in music that you can relate to and think, well, this to me is very wintry? And I thought, well, I never thought of music in this way, but then he gave me this idea, and I thought, okay, well, let me come up with something. So I suggested some pieces to him. So and then we shot films. Film really, because one of the things about working with something like films set to music, of course, the timing is important, but also because music has to tell a story. The films we used were per piece, so it was nothing really sort of happening, but it would be like I can think of, for example, Bach was winter. All of the winter was Bach, but from cantatas, not preludes and fugues or suites. It was arrangements of cantatas, and there would be one where there would be three houses in the middle of, I don't know, I think it was Ukraine at the time, with a snowstorm. It was like snowstorm blowing everywhere, and it's just created that really quite mesmerizing atmosphere, really. And they just had one picture for that particular piece with it was again Beethoven Moonlight Sonata, but in a different interpretation, and that was autumn for me. So we found this lake and went to there when it was really early morning, and shot it when it was a lot of fog, and it was just the end of summer time, so it was kind of, you know, abundant, you know, pedalers, and everything was kind of, you know, it was end of season. Things were coming to change. The nature was preparing to change. So it was quite exciting, you know, sort of shooting that. That took a long time. That was, I think, a year of work. Because it's a very, very complex process. And then we did it in 2 halves, 2 premieres, and then I actually played the whole cycle again. Well, I'll talk a little bit about how to actually perform it, because it's not easy playing with a screen, because, you know, you have, even though we are focused on what we're doing, you still have this kind of peripheral vision, and, you know, when you have a screen next to you, it's overwhelming, because it's a lot of things going on, and this color and projection is kind of off-putting. So the first time playing with a screen is actually extremely difficult. And then it sort of gets a little bit easier. So I think I have, I can't quite get to the place that I really want, but so maybe you can just hear a little bit of this, just to kind of, for you to get an idea of what it looks like. That was the lake. That's again with text by a contemporary British writer. So you can see the dimensions of the screen. It's absolutely enormous. Show you sort of various pieces, because somehow the computer doesn't want me to be able to pick things up. Anyway, so this was a very exciting concert. I also worked with film, which is not here, with the documentary films, sort of the turn of the century, from Paris and Buenos Aires. We did a project called Fusion, and it was with the chamber music, with me and the cellist Leslie Jones. We played a concert to set to the silent films from that era, and we tried to kind of sort of portray the atmosphere of that. Recently, I have been kind of researching what people were doing in the concerts, because the concert life is coming to a lot of changes. So I've been researching what people do, or what people did in other difficult times, which was beginning of the 20th century, or end of 19th century, with also wars raging and a lot of hardship. So I was interested to see what people did then. And I came across with the concept of café concert, and you probably know it from Monet picture. And I quite liked it because it was small artistic productions that were delivered in kind of intimate venues, and I thought maybe this is the way to go, you know, finding smaller places to perform and building audience that will follow a particular concept. I mean, these artistic productions were very much produced in a different way. I mean, they originated in Paris, but they went across Europe, and they were in every European country, including also Russia. Actually, we had a very famous places, particularly St. Petersburg, which has produced a lot of literature and music, and lots of artists collaborated there. The whole kind of concept that it was affordable for people to go and hear really good music, but also see a very good, interesting art, but also it was a kind of a variété, in the sense that it was a lot of variety. So it wasn't just a chamber music or a solo recital, but it was, if it was a chamber music, it would be variations of solo, duos, trios, and bringing out other artists. So I found two very interesting players, and we formed kind of a London trio, and we did our first concert with a mime. And of course, Debussy music lends itself very beautifully to mime, because this was also in Paris very popular at the time, very popular art. And in fact, when I was growing up, Marcel was a big hero at that time. So we kind of included that, and did a lot of sort of interpreting of his music with a mime. Our second concert was on the 1st of July, and this was music of moving images, and this was a little introduction to Café Bezek. Can we just hear this? It's going to, yeah, so this.
Well, 1840s, there was a huge spread out into different places across Paris where they were small artistic productions held at the piano concert. That would be an hour and a half long, that if you never had an exposure to classical music. Musicians can be quite experimental in such places because you're not intimidated by it. When you're free, it's an opportunity to be experimental and create something different. First Café concert was with a mime, and now you're preparing for something really exciting. It's about moving images, so it's composers who wrote for ballet, opera, film, theatre, and we just want to see how music connects with us. How does your imagination work? Can you create a story of your own making? We'll be playing J.K.D., who's a contemporary composer. We'll be playing music by Nina Otto, who was the composer for Fellini, but also wrote music for Zeffirelli. And also we found this really quirky, beautiful piece that was written for flute piccolo, piano, and silent film in the 1920s. So I'm really excited about it. It's 1st of July, 2023.
Okay. Yeah, and then these pictures actually, if you just turn the light up again, these are from our second concert, and it was a very interesting thing. We also tried lots of different ideas. So one of them was photography. I'm interested in photography. I have a little exhibition in Napoli, in the hotel where we stay. These are all my pictures there. Yes. So this was photography at the top, and then at the bottom we found a piece of music written for piano, piccolo, and a silent film. And it was a silent film of I think his name was Segunda de Garcia. It was in Paris again, 1920s, and he created this really fantastic short films. They're about 5, 6, 7 minutes long, and they're very, very unusual because he just picks up. I mean, this story was about a man. It was very funny actually. It was about a man who was dreaming of a woman butterfly. Who doesn't? So he found this cocoon, and he was playing. There was a charmer, and then the woman jumps out of the cocoon, and he's overwhelmed. He's so happy. She's beautiful. Has got nice rings, and then what happens? The cocoon multiplies, and there are more women, and he's completely overtaken and overrun and overwhelmed. And of course, at the end of it, what happens is that the women turn him into cocoon himself, so he's gone. So it was actually quite fun to do this. And also presented a number of kind of challenges because the score is very precise. Like with the flute, there will be a lot of kisses and hissing. So there will be a contemporary sort of flute technique used. And the composer Nicole Chamberlain, she was very particular, you know, you have to do this, and you know, the guy on the screen, he would pick up a flute, and that's when the flutist had to play. So it was a very interesting process of rehearsing and kind of be guided, you know, what does she do when, how can we play the music that actually we are together at this point, and so on. And also looking at the screen, because we have to do that. And on the right-hand side, it was also, we played with Una, lovely, okay. What do I want to do with this? We played excerpts from the ballets, and we had to, we actually chose some ballet videos that were already created, and then so we played to them, so they were the answers were dancing. And it was also a very interesting process of working with that, because you had to memorize the movements. So, you know, when he was doing this, you know, he was saying, you know, I can't live without you, and I had to almost verbalize the movement of the dance, so I knew what was going on, where, at what time, and you know, and why. What is the storyline? Because obviously you can't be synchronized completely, but you have to be there at the key points. So we've actually done quite a lot of things with this. So I think this, what I wanted to do today, put the lights on, is that I'm actually writing a book because I've done so many projects with this that I've decided to write a short manual for classical musicians who want to be experimenting with this, because in academia there are courses offered with collaboration, but it takes a very long time. It's actually not always the students have time or desire to necessarily kind of delve into it, and I thought maybe just having a kind of a short manual would help people who want to experiment. I have a couple of students that I've mentored in doing collaborative projects like this, but I think it would be nice to do it. I think what does it do? Well, first of all, you start hearing music with different ear, whether you want it or not, because even I remember we were rehearsing with Una, we were rehearsing the Tchaikovsky and Prokofiev ballet pieces. You know, when there was a screen, you actually start playing much more orchestrally, just simply by watching the dances and imagining that, you know, seeing that in the hall, you know, the people dancing. So it was it changes the way you approach music. It changes the way you hear it. Also, we found that, well, I found over the years that it brings to concerts audience that does not necessarily come to classical music. Because people come for different reasons. They come either for dance, or they come from film, or they come for poetry, and then they hear this beautiful music and they say, well, you know, it's actually, you know, we missed out. So we've built our own audience. I think it's interesting and exciting way. And of course, then you also meet with interesting people along the way, and people who come from who are artists, but work in a different field, so they very much unleash your own imagination. And and you become creative and collaborative. And I just thought I'll introduce you. This is a little taster. There's a lot of technicalities behind this, which I didn't want to bore you today with, but I thought, you know, if people are opening up and looking for, as Joanna was saying in her lecture, for something, you know, where you are and what is your niche and what makes you unique, this could be one way of where you can sort of explore another creative field. Yeah, thank you very much.